really do wish I could have, but I can't. My brothers would be mad at me if I put it in a red cup. Huh?
Yeah, that's alcohol cup. Everybody knows that.
That has me cracking up. That would be funny if I was sipping out of a red cup the whole time.
Oh, and then y'all gotta remember to turn the
we live right now.
Turn your volumes off. Down.
Oh yeah, everybody mute. Please, everybody, take a moment, share the broadcast. Remember when I used to say, share the broadcast? Share the broadcast.
YouTube is live.
Share the broadcast. Man, to me,
Who got? Is that me?
do we have any?
Volume is down. Okay.
Oh.
Here we go.
So you can.
Is this it?
Yes.
Okay.
So it never
Sound?
loses it.
No.
Okay,
And
so
then what do I do?
go up to V, and it should say present. Not right up there. On the top side. I'm sorry. Yeah, right there. And then present, the first one. I gotta say right here.
Yeah, we deep, man. We deep. Look at that. Take a picture. Good job. Look at that, man. Got a nice piece over there. Edward, can you hear me volume-wise?
Yeah.
Great. I don't talk about Facebook. I say Facebook. But y'all, you like you eating popcorn? I feel all like. How much time we got, Dennis?
7 o'clock.
All right, y'all. 7 o'clock. Where's my chopper?
Audrey, that's you.
Come on, chopper. Oh. Step in front of the camera and chop it. We gotta do it.
Are you serious? Okay. What is it? What you want me to call it? 101, take one?
You ain't read your script.
I ain't prepared.
Hold on.
Microphone check. Can you hear me from the
I
mic?
got you.
Is this how they do with minister with the minister? All right. Well,
Jeez. We ready.
Okay, you ready?
God gonna bless you real good. Real good. Y'all ready?
Y'all
Go
ready?
ahead. Go ahead.
Poli-Sci 101, take one.
Hey. All right. What's up, Chicago? This is your man, Maze Jackson. And this is Poli-Sci 101. I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. We have a live studio audience in the building. You guys make some noise. All right, that's right. Welcome to what we believe is a historical live broadcast, a 4-week Facebook and YouTube live mini-series called Poli-Sci 101. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today you are participating in what we are having. You are a part of what we want to consider our live studio audience. So we've got a live studio audience here in the studios, but we also consider our Facebook and YouTube live audiences part of our audience. So we want to encourage you all to participate and join in the live broadcast. Leave your questions, comments, concerns. Even our social media commentator, Ruthie Moore, will be coming back and we'll do a live question and answer series, live question and answer section immediately following from 8 to 8:30. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us today for Poli-Sci 101. What black people need to know about politics in Illinois. Today's session, how we got here, the history of black politics in Chicago. Now, Just in case you're wondering, my name is Maze Jackson, and I'm the host of the WVOM Morning Show with Maze Jackson and Charles Thomas. And we air our show every weekday, Monday through Friday, from 6 to 9 a.m. We like for you to join us as we take our local elected officials into what we like to call the Lion's Den, where we like to ask the tough questions, hold our elected officials accountable, but most importantly, you know what? We like to ask the question, what's in it for the black people? Now, so many times we're able to cover stories, but are not able to get to the problem from a historical perspective. So we decided to produce this series, this first of its kind series, a social media mini-series about politics in Illinois and what black people need to know about it. Black politics in Illinois. Now, as Chicago continues to be transformed, it's important that we, as black Chicagoans, remember our place in history in this city, right? Not only did the black man John Baptiste Point du Sable found the city, but black people have been essential in creating the power structure that exists today. So even as we're constantly bombarded with the stories of black people being pushed out of the city of Chicago and the story of black people being victims, it is important that we remember our history in this Chicago is a story of strength, but also of black power. Now, not the type of black power, Ungawa black power that we talk about on the morning show, but black business power and black political power. There was a time when black Chicago represented all the hopes and dreams of black America. So how do we go from a place where black people determined our own fate and having it determined to a place where our fate has been determined for us? From dictating to politicians what we wanted to politicians dictating to us what they wanted. And can we use what we've learned in our history regarding to return to our former glory? So I want to ask you to join us for the next 4 weeks as part of our social media mini-series, What Black People Need to Know About Politics in Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's episode, the history of black power politics in Chicago. I hope you'll find this interesting, educational, and informative. But most of all, I hope that you'll find it inspirational and enlightening, because we have to know what's in it for the black people. Ladies and gentlemen, join us for what's in it for the black people. Thank you. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to get ready. We're going to launch into this. Now, yesterday as we were going through the rehearsal, we were trying to decide if I was going to make this presentation and I was going to read my script. And look, guys, I got 40 whole pages. 40 whole pages that I could go through, and I could read these. But I think, you know what? Dennis Evans said to me, Maze, we need the Maze factor. So hopefully today we'll be able to tell an enlightening and powerful story about the history of black power politics. And I edited the title just a little bit because black power politics is what I want to talk about. But I want to take you back. I want you to go back to me, journey back to me in the early 1900s when black Chicago was the epicenter of urban life in the North for black Americans. It was powered by a booming industrial and factory industry with manufacturing-based economy, plus the black population exploded due to the Great Migration. The Great Migration where black folks had to get out of the Deep South and come to the North because they wanted to take part in the economic largesse. Jobs, contracts, opportunities. And even though we were forced to live within the Black Belt, which was an area defined from 21st Street to 35th Street initially on State Street, and eventually expanded all the way to 95th. It was in that black belt that we found our power. And even though we were forced to live in overcrowded and highly segregated places, white politicians in Chicago knew that the path to success always included the black vote. And there were always black power brokers, black people who understood the power of the black vote, and they were always there ready to capitalize on that opportunity with white politicians, whether it was for themselves, but not only for themselves, for the community. Now those black power brokers, they were usually no different than their white counterparts. Now you got to remember, we were living in what was considered probably the Wild West times of Chicago. And so the city was divided into to ethnic groups, the biggest groups being the Irish, the Italian, the Polish, and the blacks. Most of those ethnic groups' power was derived from a combination of legal and illegal activities. Now it's important that you understand that, because if we were to look at the narrative that we hear now, black people are always accused of being criminals. But the fact of the matter is, crime has been a part of the origin of every ethnic group here. But they've all had the opportunity to make the transition. For black folks, that crime, that illegal activity really centered around the activity of numbers running, or policy as it was more formally known. Now policy relied on a network of small black business operators who operated policy wheels and made tens of millions of dollars off of penny, nickel, and dime bets, the hopes of black workers who went to work every day hoping to hit it big. They wanted to hit their number. Does it sound familiar? Sounds like something you've heard before? Maybe like the lottery? Imagine that. Today's lottery was actually taken from an invention of black people called policy. Now policy, guys, remember, these guys were collecting penny, nickel, and dime bets every day. Nobody was thinking about these guys, and the policy kings were making tens of millions of dollars under the radar. But, and quite frankly, the policy bosses really ran the black community, and white politicians left it to them and the ward bosses. And while there was a criminal element to policy, it really revolved around, the policy was not all bad. Policy actually was the economic engine of the black community. So while those policy kings paid bribes, police payoffs, and had a plethora of associated vices, they were also the legitimate economic engine to the black community. Now remember, what black person could go into a bank and get a loan back then? Could you really walk in and say, hey, I wanted to start a new store? So where did the black people go? They went to the policy kings. And that legacy of the policy kings continued on as they recognized their role to finance the black community. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it was against this backdrop that the black community of Chicago became a legitimate political force in Chicago to be reckoned with. Now, all the way back to the early 1900s, every Chicago mayor knew that if you wanted to be successful, if you wanted the crown, if you wanted to be the man in Chicago, that path went through the black community. So whether it was a Republican or a Democratic mayor, they always made sure that black Chicago got its piece of the patronage and economic pie. But to deliver that patronage and economic pie, there was always the black gatekeeper. Something that we talk about now in the morning show, we call it the Afrostocracy. But back in the day, there were these black gatekeepers who white politicians relied on to deliver jobs, contracts, and services to the black community. And in exchange, those power brokers would deliver the black vote. Sound familiar? Sound like something you've heard before? You know, line up, get the buses together, line them up, get the seniors and take them to the chicken dinner. That has a very long history in Chicago. But really, the fact of the matter was, those black gatekeepers back in the day understood that their job was to deliver resources to the black community. So unlike today, those gatekeepers were responsible to the black community. They ensured that we got our fair share of the bag, the bag as we like to call it on the morning show. But it all started to change when the white folks started to count the money that the black policy kings were making. And when they realized that those pennies, nickels, and dimes were adding up to hundreds of millions of dollars, well, Lord have mercy, the game changed. and the backdrop, the political future of Chicago was forever changed. Ladies and gentlemen, join us. We welcome you today for What's in It for the Black People presents Poli-Sci 101, What Black People Need to Know About Politics in Illinois, a 4-week social media mini-series. Today's episode, Black Power Politics in Illinois, How Do We Get Here? So, ladies and gentlemen, we've described the backdrop of which Chicago was in. Chicago in the early 1900s was a booming place for black people. But as soldiers, as black people came back to Chicago, they were crowded, as we talked about, into the Black Belt. So as tens of thousands of black folks came to Chicago, they were forced into a small and compact community. But one black man saw that not as a disadvantage, but an opportunity. That man was the first black congressman to go back to Washington, D.C. after Reconstruction, and his name was Oscar DePriest. Now, Oscar DePriest was born son of slaves, and he grew up in Kansas and migrated to Chicago. Now, while he was in Chicago, remember, when he moved here, Chicago has always been a machine town. They don't want nobody that nobody sent since the beginning of time. But during that time, it was the equivalent of the Wild West of politics. Now remember, the city, does this sound familiar? The city was divided along racial and ethnic lines. Sound familiar? Seems like that's a part of our history that continues. But every leader knew that each faction had its own leader. In the black community was split into two wards, the second and the third ward. The second and the third ward was considered the Black Belt, where black people were concentrated. But due to racial segregation, they couldn't leave that area. But if you wanted to be the mayor of Chicago, guess what? You had to come to the Black Belt. And Oscar DePriest understood that. So, Oscar DePriest took advantage of the racial segregation, the close proximity that black people lived in, and white folks need to cultivate the black vote. And guess who he built the relationship with? None other than the Republican Party. The Republican Party? What? In Chicago? Ain't this the bluest state ever? Yes. Imagine that our first black congressman to go back to Washington, D.C. was a black Republican from right here in Chicago. Now you see, Oscar DePriest, he made white folks comfortable. He understood that he needed to be the black guy that could translate the economic opportunities for the community, for the black community. So, Oscar DePriest set out to be the leader amongst blacks in the political arena, and was able to deliver the high vote turnout second and third wards for the Republican Party. Now hear me out again. This is for my man Charles. Charles, if you're listening, Oscar DePriest, he was a Republican. First one. Well, Oscar DePriest was elected to the Cook County Board in 1904 and served 2 terms from 1904 to 1908. And during that era, he became the prototype black gatekeeper, dispensing jobs, contracts, and opportunities and city resources to the black community. But y'all, Republican Party got comfortable. And you know what? They got tired of Oscar DePriest coming in, making demands. He got a little bit too big for his britches. So they decided, the Republican machine decided to oust him. And for 7 years, Oscar DePriest was put out of politics until Big Bill Thompson came back to run for mayor. Now, Big Bill Thompson, smart politician, Republican, knew that the racism in the Republican Party would be the downfall of his opponent. So he went to Oscar DePriest and cut a deal for the black vote. And by cutting that deal with DePriest, Big Bill Thompson was elected mayor and decided to reward Oscar DePriest. And how did he decide to reward Oscar DePriest? He first started by making Oscar DePriest the first black alderman. that has started a legacy that I'm not sure how we feel about that legacy right now. But Oscar DePriest was elected the first black alderman, and he was rumored to be, but he was known to everyone as the power behind the black vote. And he wielded it like a stick. He walked around and he was like, I am the man, I control the black community, and pretty much white folks respected him for it. But you know how it goes, right? Oscar DePriest got really big for his britches. And so guess what happened? There was a news story. And they started talking about the fact that he hung out with, associated with known gamblers. Now, those known gamblers, remember the policy kings we talked about? Those were the same guys that financed the campaigns. They financed the black business. Those known gamblers were our business community at the time. But they tried to use the media to smear him. Have we ever heard this before? Have we ever seen the story of a black person who is smeared for his associations, even though his white counterpart may have the same thing? Kind of same story. Seems like history repeats itself. But Oscar DePriest was, because of his powerful weight in the black community, was able to overcome that, and eventually he went to Congress and was the first black man seated in Congress. Now guess what though, y'all? Y'all know that even though he was elected congressman, you know, they didn't want to see him. They did not. So no matter how big he got in the world right here in Chicago, when he got to Washington, D.C., guess who said they didn't want him to take a seat? The Democratic Party. Boy, how times change. Well, let me tell you, in Chicago's ever-changing political dynamic, DePriest remained a loyal party man. He was loyal to the Republican Party until the end. But like so many of our black politicians, Oscar DePriest was more loyal to the party than he was to the people. And so even during the Great Depression, when black people were unemployed and couldn't find jobs, and FDR talked about the New Deal, Oscar DePriest rejected that. Not because it was better for his people, but why? Because his loyalty was to the party over the people. Oscar DePriest was eventually defeated by one of his own understudies. But little did he know that that understudy would take the black power that Oscar DePriest had cultivated, metamorphosize it, and go on to become what may be known as the most powerful black politician of the 20th century. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, I'm talking about William Big Bill Dawson. Now you got to understand, William Big Bill Dawson, he was the man. See this guy? Little would you know that this guy is the person that is responsible for making the Daily Legacy. Could you imagine that? A black man right there was responsible for creating the longest running political dynasty in Chicago. Unfortunately, it wasn't for black people. But let's talk a little bit about it. William Big Bill Dawson succeeded where his predecessor. Now remember, Big Bill was an understudy of Oscar DePriest. A native of Georgia, Big Bill came to Chicago after World War I. And I'm going to tell you, he was a bit frustrated after returning from the war and seeing how black people had fought for the United States and to see how they were being treated in our country. But Big Bill, always the ambitious one, decided that he was going to partner up with Oscar DePriest, and he became a part of the Republican machine that helped send Oscar DePriest to Washington, D.C. Big Bill eventually operated the 2nd and 3rd Ward, and eventually became elected 2nd Ward Alderman. Now, while DePriest was busy fighting in Congress, Big Bill was busy in City Council working on issues of housing and urban discrimination for the black community. Well, y'all, after a couple defeats, Big Bill realized these Republicans ain't really with us no more. And so he decided with two of his other friends that they were going to leave the Republican Party and join the Democratic Party. But Big Bill did something just a little bit different. Big Bill decided that instead of joining the Democratic machine, that he would build the power of the black community into his own version of the black Democratic machine. Now, it was patterned after the same process that the white parties, it was patterned after the same principles of the Democratic machine in Chicago, except Big Bill decided that he wanted to consolidate the black power under black people. So he went about creating a black Democratic machine, and within 4 years, while Oscar DePriest refused to leave the Republican Party, Big Bill had taken over, Big Bill had taken over the 2nd and 3rd wards and had gone on to become not only the alderman, but went on to become the congressman. But Big Bill, remember, understood black power. Big Bill said, I'm not going to turn black people over to white folks. I'm going to cultivate the power, and we're going to keep it. And from that point, ladies and gentlemen, that is when Black Chicago became known as the Black Mecca. You hear stories about Harlem, you hear stories about the Harlem Renaissance, but the place to be was Chicago if you were a black man doing business during the era of Big Bill Dawson. Now check it out. Big Bill was a G. He understood it. He understood how to wield political power, and by creating an independent black machine, he convinced black people to be loyal to each other, not to the Democratic Party. And then by being loyal to each other, he was able to bring that all together to go to the party, and decided that he was going to make the party come to him. Now, if you all know politics is a game of addition, not subtraction. Addition and multiplication, not subtraction. And there was a young, ambitious politician who had taken a page from Big Bill Thompson and said, if I want to be the mayor of Chicago, I'm going to need the black vote. And how did he get the black vote? By making a deal with Big Bill Dawson. Now I'm going to tell y'all, Big Bill Dawson, he was the real deal, right? He was by far considered the most powerful black person in politics. Let me help y'all understand. That Big Bill Thompson, when Richard J. Daley wanted to be the mayor of Chicago, guess what? I mean, we talk about American Pharaoh and all the history. Guess who he had to come see to get it done? He had to come see and kiss the ring of Big Bill Dawson, a black man. Guys, it's important to understand that. It's important that we understand that as black folks, that these people are in power. We built this city, we founded it. But the power has always gone through the black community. There's only really been one time when we felt strong enough to grasp the ring. We were always willing to give it away and trade it to get to the number 2 spot. It took us all the way into the 80s to realize our power, but we'll get to that. So let me tell y'all. So y'all know how it works for a black man, right? Get powerful, start making millionaires, right? Remember now, during Big Bill's era, Chicago was home to the most black millionaires. This was the epicenter of black millionaires, right? But Big Bill started getting a little bit too big for his britches. So, after Mayor Daley became the mayor and consolidated power, he started saying, man, I'm tired of having to answer to this. Who does this Negro think he is having me come over to the South Side? I'm the mayor, I'm the boss. And so they got tired of Big Bill, because let me tell you, Big Bill walked into the room and let you know he was the man. Well, let me tell you, as they always do, they started a plot to undermine Big Bill's power. And how did they do it? They did it with a young Olympic track star from Chicago who Big Bill had placed his confidence and trust in. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Congressman Ralph Metcalfe. I want to tell y'all a quick story real quick. I know. I'm going to step off just a little. Excuse me, I'm drinking my coffee. Now, y'all, I don't know, does anybody used to watch cartoons when they was a kid on Channel 32? And they would do those little Black History vignettes, and they would tell the story, and you would always hear the story of Ralph Metcalfe, the track star that was a congressman. And you know, I always be like, oh, I was so proud of him, and I would love when those things came on during Black History Month. But y'all, Ralph Metcalfe was the example that we need, was an example we need to learn from. I'm gonna tell y'all. So check it out. Ralph Metcalfe, when a black man gets too big for his britches, white folks always look for somebody who can cut him down to size. Because they always need you. But they got to find some, before they can cut you good, they got to make sure that they can replace you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Ralph Metcalfe was that for Mayor Daley. See, Big Bill had gotten too big for his britches, and the Democratic machine decided to look no further than the person that Big Bill had already determined was going to be his heir apparent. So now dig this. Big Bill is at the pinnacle of power. He's got someone that he's grooming to take to the next level. But instead of waiting for the person that is supposed to go to the next level, the white boys came and offered him a deal. They said, hey man, we'll make you the king if you cross your boy out. So here's how it went down. Now let me back up. Because see, Ralph Metcalfe came to Chicago just like Big Bill. He was from Georgia, but he had come to Chicago in 1917, and he had a knack for doing things fast. Eventually that wound up with him going to becoming an Olympic track star, the same Olympics with Jesse Owens and Heil Hitler, and they came back. But Jesse Owens, when he came back, he needed to work. He said, Olympics don't pay the bills. So what he did was he came back home and did what most black people in that era did. He went to the ward boss, who happened to be Big Bill Dawson, and said, I need a job. Now Big Bill, being the enterprising person that he is, said, hold on. This young, strapping young man just came back from the Olympics. I'm thinking he can really get us and turn us out some votes. So he brought Metcalfe in and brought Metcalfe along pretty fast, and within a short amount of time, Metcalfe was clearly his heir apparent. But Metcalfe, as they always do, white folks saw him and they said, boy, we can work with him. Now, when the white folks say, ooh, boy, we can work with him, that usually means the demise of somebody black. And in this case, that demise was the demise of Big Bill Dawson. How did they do it? Well, remember, Big Bill was in Congress in D.C. So while Big Bill was in Congress in D.C., Mayor Daley would give all the goodies, give all the jobs, give all the contracts to Ralph Metcalfe without talking to Big Bill Dawson. So very shortly, people started to recognize they didn't have to go to Big Bill. They could go to Ralph Metcalfe. And so the way it always works is they gutted and transferred the power from the second ward, where Big Bill Dawson was the committeeman, to the third ward, where Ralph Metcalfe was the committeeman, and that's where all the jobs and contracts went. Well, guess what happens when you don't have no jobs, contracts, and money? You don't have no people. And so what wound up happening was Big Bill Dawson lost all of the political patronage in the army that had kept him the most powerful person, and it had all been transferred to Ralph Metcalfe. But But remember, the key to Big Bill Dawson was Big Bill Dawson created a black machine that was self-contained. Ralph Metcalfe, by taking the deal, opened up the black community and allowed the white folks in. And from that point on, they had infiltrated the black Democratic power base. Well, now, as it always happens, Ralph Metcalfe, you know, you all good when you in the house and you feel real good. They pat you on the back, they make you think you one of the team. You, oh, come on, have dinner. Don't date my daughter. You come have dinner. So Ralph Metcalfe got real comfortable. Pretty much machine guy, got the jobs, got the contracts. Poor Bill Dawson, he done faded off into oblivion. Until one day, a black businessman was the victim of police brutality. Was beaten within inches of his life. And Ralph Metcalfe knew this, brother. It was personal for him. And so Ralph decided to follow his conscience. Sound familiar? Black man find Jesus late in life. Right? So he found Jesus late in life and decided that he wanted to speak out. Right? Decided he wanted to speak out. But in speaking out, Mayor Daley said, hey, homeboy, you took the deal. You know what the rules are. The rules to this game are, you do what we say, how we say. So no more talking about the police brutality. But Metcalfe was starting to feel himself. He was years down the line, and he felt like, people, they called him a sellout. He was feeling the pressure of not standing up, and so he decided to stand up. And in standing up, the machine said, hey, homie, we told you to sit down. But Ralph didn't sit down, and he kept speaking out against police brutality. Well, you know what happens there. When you start talking and you don't play the party line, the party tries to come and get you. But there was a lesson from Ralph Metcalfe, who even after years of selling out, found Jesus late in life. Ralph Metcalfe learned that by siding with the community, the machine couldn't stop him. Because up until that time, if the machine said you were out, you were out. Ralph Metcalfe went into re-election, opposed by the machine. They turned the whole world against him, and guess what, y'all? He won. The black community stood up for him, and they stood with him. Y'all? It was the first time in history when black folks in Chicago was like, you know what? We can beat the machine. And I'll tell you guys, although Ralph Metcalfe never really held any other political power after standing up to the machine, he knew that he was safe in the black community, and he went on to run again and again and was expected to go on to his 5th term in Congress, opposed to the machine, when he died suddenly. But although Metcalfe never had any real political power, what you found out was that he had created a spark that would take black folks to the zenith of political power in Chicago in the middle of the 80s. Ladies and gentlemen, the person that person was Harold Washington. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you are participating in a live broadcast, so I'm going to ask you to bear with me as a second. I'm going to take a quick intermission, and I'll be right back. Now, if somebody, you know what, hold on. I'm not going to drink any more coffee. Okay, guys, we'll cut this out. So you all, just so you know, everybody here, you are participating in a live taping. This is a live studio audience, live taping. We got a studio audience. Everybody is in here. And you know, what is that they call that? The third screen or the third wall? We have broken the third wall and using social media to interact. Now, we want to encourage you all to stay tuned, keep watching, because we're going to have a live question and answer series immediately following this, they're gonna tell me how I'm doing. Oh, running out of time. So I'm gonna have to go ahead, and I guess we won't be taking a intermission. We'll launch right into the Harold Washington years. Y'all, can y'all stick with me? We good? How we doing? Am I bored? Y'all not bored, are y'all?
No. Keep it going. Keep it going.
Okay. All right.
You want Harold?
You want help? Well, you got it. Ladies and gentlemen, so I had a long conversation. The Harold Washington years, in my estimation, were the best of times and the worst of times for black people. The Harold Washington years demonstrated what we were capable of, but it also demonstrated the worst in the black community. I often say that Harold Washington was the best and the worst thing that ever happened to black Chicago. I think he took us to a level that was so high, that we got so high off of what was possible, that when he was taken away suddenly, he became a dream unfulfilled. White folks kept going, black folks kind of froze in time right there. But we'll talk about how we got there. Ladies and gentlemen, the Harold Washington years. Now, I want to set the backdrop right now. It's 1976 in December. The Democratic machine is at the height of its power, and suddenly Mayor Richard J. Daley dies. With having crushed all of his opponents, he had basically institutionalized racism in Chicago, had defeated all comers. Man, he even sent Martin Luther King Jr. packing. Said, I don't understand the peculiar Negroes of Chicago. Live, we'll cut that from the table. And he had reinforced racial segregation. He had built the largest continuous strip of public housing down State Street in the heart of the Black Belt. And on top of it, the assassinations of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were resonating in the minds of black people everywhere. You had the backdrop of the Willis wagons and the consistent disrespect of the black community that had really unsettled the black community. And when black Chicagoans burned down the West Side after Dr. King was killed and Daley refused to rebuild it, it just served as a reminder to black Chicagoans that they don't love us. They didn't have no love for us, and it was being reinforced every day. So you gotta imagine that when the undisputed champion, the boss of bosses, died suddenly with no heir apparent, there was a struggle, a power struggle, and all the ward bosses wanted a chance to grab the ring. Now, the black community's candidate was a young state senator. Many people called him brilliant. He was an attorney, well-spoken, and a political whiz. He had come up as a machine Democrat under Ralph Metcalfe and had led their young Democrats. This young man was Harold Washington. Now, we hear all the wonderful stories about Harold Washington, but you know what we never hear about? The first time he ran. You know why? Because they lost. And they got mollywopped. And he was upset. He was upset that the black political class did not support him. But let me just say, because Harold was what many people call a political genius, he moved on and he went on to be elected to Congress. But at the same time, in that election, Michael Bilandic was elected mayor of Chicago, right? But Bilandic, the former 11th Ward alderman who comes from Bridgeport, was really looked at as a placeholder for young Rich Daley. Enter Jane Byrne. Dun, 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 dun. Now, Jane Byrne won the election by all accounts because she placed her bet with the black community. You see, Jane Byrne was worried about all of the old political ward bosses who were looking to put a young Rich Daley in place. And so she felt that her allies would be the black community. And during the campaign, boy, did she go hard to get black support. She went to black communities, black churches, and with the overwhelming support of the black community, Jane Byrne was elected mayor of Chicago. But when she got elected, as most people do, they forget about who? The black people. So Jane Byrne got elected. She then immediately proceeded to take our votes for granted. She started hiring people. She started firing black people, hiring racists, people who were openly racist, even people who didn't live in Chicago to take over, guess what? CPS. Sound like a familiar thing? Why does it seem like the education of black kids, no matter what era, seems to be not a problem to destroy it for white folks? But Jane Byrne spent 4 years disrespecting the black community. And then, in the last final hour, decided that she was going to pivot back when she realized that she wasn't going to be able to secure those ward bosses. So guess what she did?
Stuntery.
Stuntery. You know what she did? Does anybody remember? So everybody knows about the Taste of Chicago, right?
Yes.
Well, the Taste of Chicago was originally the Chicago Fest. And it was created as a big old party and a big old dance to keep the black folks happy. Guess who they had? Kool and the Gang and Stevie Wonder, right? So Jane Byrne is like, I'm in trouble with black folks. Let's have a party. Woo, let's have a party. Let's have Kool and the Gang and Stevie Wonder. Now you know Stevie Wonder's a musical genius. You know Stevie Wonder's a musical genius. Well, Jesse Jackson, the black community had become so outraged with the treatment by Jane Byrne that they were like, they made an issue to boycott Stevie Wonder. Black people So Jesse Jackson got Stevie Wonder to not perform. Kool and the Gang was going to boycott in solidarity as well, but they found some very rich Jewish lawyers who informed them that if they did not perform, that they would be going to bankruptcy court early. So instead, as Dr. Conrad World told me, they all performed with red bands on their arms as a show of solidarity, because everybody understands, black folks ain't trying to go to court. We ain't trying to go. So, but Jane Byrne, guys, do you notice these same things happening again and again? So Jane Byrne decides that after dissing black folks, what she's gonna do is have a party. Guess what though, y'all? For one of the first times in life, black people were not having it. And when the black community came, when election time came around, this time the black community was ready. Now, you got to understand the role of black business. This is 1985. There are 28 black businesses on the Black Enterprise 100 that are located in Chicago. Right? This is the mecca of black millionaires. Soul Train is happening here. Everything is going down right now here in Chicago. And the black folks, in spite of all that, were tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so they went back to Harold Washington and said, hey, Harold, I think we can get Jane Byrne this time. Now, Harold was like, oh, no, you Negroes ain't getting me again. Oh, no. Y'all had me out here, got lost. I'm in Congress. People love me. I'm doing great. And what wound up happening was Harold Washington told the black business community, if you all want me to run, here's what you got to do. You got to put $150,000 cash in the bank. Now, $150,000 in 1985, that's got to be close to $1 million. He said, I need you to register 100,000 new voters. Well, guess what, y'all? They did it. Now, there's a very different dynamic that I think you all have to understand here about black business then and now. Back then, black businesses in Chicago were made by black people. Understand me. Johnson Products, Luster, Soft Sheen, Soul Train, Ebony, Jet. Those people were black business people who made money from black people. So it was in their best interest to always protect the best interest of those black people. So when it came time to elect an elected official, the money that it took to elect Harold came from black people. That's very different from where we are now. And it was a very strategic plan by the Dailies to ensure that the black money was controlled by them. But back in that day, the black folks said they had a business meeting and everybody ponied up and they said, led by Ed Gardner, said, look, and Dempsey Travis, and what's my man over at the bank? Seaway Bank, and they all said Jacoby Dickens, and they all said you gotta put some money in. And the black business community compiled the money, they put it together, they registered the voters, and let me tell y'all, you know the story. You know the story. I don't have to tell you because we all, for most of y'all, we've lived through it, we saw it. But Harold Washington was elected mayor. He defeated Jane Byrne and young Richard Daley. Now, I'm going to tell y'all, just so you can show how racist white folks are. In Cook County, there's no such thing as a Republican. Bernard Epton got in the race and made it a close race because white folks just could not imagine the concept of Harold Washington. But Harold Washington was eventually triumphant and became the mayor of Chicago. But that election led to a power struggle between the Harold Washington coalition and what became known as the Verdoliak 29, a group of aldermen led by alderman and chairman of the Cook County Democratic Party. Think about this. The chairman of the Cook County Democratic Party led an insurgency against the black Democratic mayor. See, Tony Preckwinkle, anybody? Ooh. Heard it? Ooh. Right? I'm just saying. Maybe I'm crazy. Sorry, I digress. Verdoliak's group was led by Verdoliak, Ed Burke, who remains the finance chair to this day, and Parks Commissioner and Superintendent Edmund Kelly. Together, they did everything. Because they had the majority, they did everything possible to thwart Harold Washington. As ward committeeman and alderman, Ed Verdoliak used race and politics to stoke the division. But can I tell y'all what it was about? It was about the bag. It was about the money. They did not want... Remember, this is the Wild West. There are hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, and now you about to give it to the black man to pass it out? Hell to the no, they wasn't going. And so what they did was they stoked racial fears with white ethnics in the hopes of pushing them from voting against Harold Washington. So what did Harold Washington have to do? What is politics? It's a game of addition. So Harold Washington had to go and make a coalition. Now, who was that coalition with? That coalition was with Lakeshore liberal whites and Hispanics at the time. Now, we get power. We say, man, we want it all. But Harold, if he was going to be successful, had to call together a coalition. And when he came up for his next election, Harold was able to pick up 5 seats and was elected the undisputed champion of Chicago. He was the mayor with a coalition of white Lakeshore liberals, the solid black community, as well as a growing Hispanic community. But you got to remember that there was division in the black community. Remember, we got the ward bosses of the growing ward bosses who are machine Democrats, as well as these liberal fight the machine blacks. And Harold had to keep all of that together. So let me just tell you guys, he was able to do it, and then that's when we saw all the victorious. You want Harold? Well, you got him. And it you know, I think back to that time as a kid growing up in Bolingbrook, and even in Bolingbrook, we would just look at Harold Washington and be like, man, black people, like you just had a sense of pride about this black man. So can you imagine coming home from school, turning on the TV on channel 32 and seeing that Harold Washington had died? I felt like I felt moved, because here was black people had gone to the top of the mountain. There was no dream of Barack Obama. We didn't even think about that. The concept of a black mayor in Chicago and he was dead, I had big plans. Man, I was gonna be the first black something, and I knew that I could do it because of Harold Washington. And he died, y'all. And it was a dream unfulfilled. You know, I think back to the passing of Harold Washington. And as I think back to his passing, I think about the election of Harold Washington and what it meant to black people. I feel like that day, black political growth and power was stunted forever. Now, people will tell me about the election of Barack Obama, but that to me, and no diss to President Obama, but you know, he's kind of Hawaiian, kind of Indonesian. No diss. But when I saw Harold Washington, I saw myself.
Yeah.
I saw he didn't go up in Bolingbrook, but I did see in Harold Washington the opportunity to be that, right? A black dude, a black man who could speak articulately to white folks and shame them. A black man who didn't have to bow down, did not have to cow down. And for Harold Washington to be taken so soon, I think it stunted a lot of our growth. Let me tell y'all, and then I'm going to wrap this up. The death of Harold Washington set in motion a chain of events that has led to the destruction of the black political infrastructure. After the passing of Harold Washington, we took on liberal, progressive, we took on all these monikers, and never again did we put black first. For that 6-year window, it was not just okay to be black, but it was the bomb to be black. I was a senior in high school thinking to myself, man, can I tell y'all at Bolingbrook High School, we used to walk around with our Harold Washington pins on. Like that was our fight. And now as I look 30 years later, and we ask black people what's going on, they still talking about the glory years of Harold. Think about the white folks that was with Harold Washington. Larry Bloom, he went on to go to jail, but he was a very powerful lawyer. Think about Pat Quinn, went on to be governor of the state of Illinois. Think about Jim Houlihan, who went on to become the assessor. Think about all of the white folks that can tell you a Harold story. And look at their life. They've all taken off. They've all continued. They used Harold as a springboard to the next level. When you look at the black people who are part of that era, take away the Montgomerys and a couple people, they still looking back. They still saying, man, because Harold for them was a dream unfulfilled. Can you imagine spending your whole life waiting for the day it finally comes, and right when you about to get it, the man died? And I'm going to tell you. I believe that it froze our activist community. It paralyzed our previous generation. And it's got our future looking backwards, which leaves our young people susceptible to anybody that we see right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I went a little bit long today, so we're going to continue this discussion next week, next Tuesday. Now, immediately following this, I'm going to take a quick break. Gotta go to the bathroom. They gonna cut that out. They gonna cut that out the edited version.
Stand up in post.
And then we come back. Hopefully, you've heard some things here. And maybe we can have a live question and answer session. I think we've got Ruthie Moore in the building. We've got our live studio audience. We have got the What's in It for the Black People team here in the building. Y'all, we are building a movement. We honestly believe that black people are going to be free. But we want our piece of the pie. We want that bag. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to tell you, it is imperative that we understand our history if we are to plan for our future. I'm your man, Maze Jackson. This has been Poli-Sci 101. What black people need to know about politics in Illinois. Today, our story was the Black Power political history. Now I'm going to take a few minute break. I'll be right back. Ruthie Moore will step in and start taking your questions. And when we come back, we'll have a question and answer series. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for bearing with us tonight.
All right.
Woo!
Come on, get Rosie coming. Here she comes.
Ruthie.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Ruth.
So we are taking your questions live for Mace to answer. So get those submitted. So one of the cool things about the audience tonight is that it's spanning the generations. So one thing that I noticed is that people are talking about where they were during the times that Mays are discussing. So one person on Facebook said, I lost my job with the barbecue place because I wouldn't wear a Jane Byrne button and remove my Harold Washington button. Somebody else said the day that Harold Washington died, they were at CVS in the civics class. Somebody also said that they remember that they were setting off fireworks across the campus of Western. So these are all things that sort of resonate within our history as we continue on to understand how we got to where we got. And so if you guys have any questions, make sure that you submit them. There's no such thing as a dumb question, as they say. There's no such thing as an ignorant question, because a lot of us do have questions. So feel free to inbox those questions if you're afraid to type them in the comment section. On YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, submit your questions on YouTube. So one of the main focuses of tonight is so that we can begin to understand the foundation of politics. And so one thing that I was really struggling with is understanding the history. So when we listen to Mays talk, sometimes he talks all the way over all of our heads because he lives what we are experiencing, but we don't understand. And so when we begin to open up our eyes and understand the things that Mays has went through and his understanding and his level of understanding of Chicago politics, when we absorb that knowledge, we can make more informed decisions. And so tonight is important. It's an important day in history, not only across social media, but right here in this room, because so many people behind the scenes have been working to put this together. And I'm pretty sure if they all could come on this and show their faces, they would. And so big shout outs. And so Maze, are you ready for these questions? We got some good ones.
Yes, Ruthie, you scoot over and I'm ready to get back in the chair. What's up, y'all? You know how I feel about people sitting in my chair. Hey, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, again, my name is Maze Jackson. This is Poli-Sci 101. I want to thank you all for taking the time to tune in to this class. We have 3 more sessions, right? 3 more sessions, Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Hope that you will support us. If you all notice, I am rocking my What's in It for the Black People wristbands, as well as we will have What's in It for the Black People t-shirts as well. Let people know that black people care about their self-interest. All right, Ruthie, I'm ready for the live question and answer session. Half hour, let's get it cracking.
All right, Maze, the first question is, when is the paper due and can we get continuing education credits?
Oh! Yeah. So the paper is not due, but if you want continuing education credits, you should come to the What's in It for the Black People meetings on Tuesday, not on the first Tuesday of every month. Reach out to KM Milton. She's the secretary of our organization, and we would encourage you, if you are interested in this, you can continue, but understand that this will keep going on. And we got 3 more weeks, Ruthie.
All right. So, Maze, the first question comes from Amina.
Amina?
So, where do we go from here? Are we dead? Has the Chicago political landscape done us in? And why do we always need a coalition and nobody else does?
No, okay, so I'm gonna go with the last one first. Everyone usually needs a coalition. And black folks tend to jump in those coalitions. We just don't ask. And actually, put Ruthie's computer right here. We can keep her in the center. Black people are willing to jump into anyone's coalition immediately. So I think that coalitions are necessary, but we have to ask what's in them. Now, what's the question before that?
So the next part of that question is, where do we go from here as black people?
I think we learned a lesson from Big Bill Dawson, right? Which was to create our party within the party. I believe so I'm not like traditional people who say, oh, politics are bad and all. I'll be honest with you. I want to go back to the traditional days of patronage and really having an organized structure in our community. I think that by not having a political apparatus and by disdaining politics, by them pushing that on us, we wind up not being able to fight for our interests. So I think it is really reorganizing the black community around our self-interest and creating our own party within the party, though.
Okay, so that's a great segue into this next question, Maze, which is, do black people need to form a new political party?
So, Ruthie, I am a pragmatist, and I think it sounds sexy to start a new party. Everybody likes that concept, but the hurdles to starting a new party are tremendous. From the number of signatures that you have to get to all of the hoops, the legal, etc. I'm suggesting that we are the base of the Democratic Party. So why do I gotta get out? Why do I have to leave what I make happen, right? So the premise is, like Bill Dawson, we have to have our own black political machine that we control. That it's not dictated to, but it dictates. It's not dictated to, it does the dictating. See, if black folks said at a political meeting, when the white folks come in and smile and we all sit in the room and just be like, hi, if everybody had a mean face and was like, what's in it for the black people? Do you think these white folks will get to keep coming into our neighborhoods? Who is bringing these people to our neighborhoods with a smile on our face when ain't nobody smiling when they leave?
Nobody smiles.
Right? So, I'm not for starting our own party. I am for getting what I'm due from the party that I have already paid for.
Okay. So, Mace, we want to take it to Facebook.
Facebook!
So, yes. So, Sheila from Facebook asks,
Hi, Sheila.
are we boycotting Michigan Avenue? If so, we need to get the word out ASAP before people buy toys for their children.
So, Sheila, I am for coordinated action, right? I don't think we can keep doing these haphazard actions. I think we've got to come up with a game plan, and we've got to also have outcomes. So, before you ask me to boycott Michigan Avenue, what is our intended outcome from that? What do we want from it? See, guys, it's sexy to do the protest. It's sexy to take the picture and get your profile picture. It's not sexy to go into the meeting. It's not sexy to sit down and write the policy and think it all out and get it out. What are we putting on the table before we go boycott something else?
Okay.
Thanks, Sheila.
So, also on YouTube.
YouTube. Hi, YouTube.
So, Why hasn't there been a strong black Republican base? And that's from Buffalo Bill from YouTube.
Buffalo Bill, there hasn't been a strong Republican base because way back when the Voting Rights Act was passed, I think that Lyndon Baines Johnson got it right. He said that I will have these Negroes voting for Democrats for years to come. It's kind of what we're seeing happen with the Democrats and the Latinos. Go back to that question.
So the question is, why isn't there a strong Republican political base?
So the challenge becomes that black folks have completely written off the Republican Party. So the Republicans have no incentive to include us in their platform. If I know that no matter what I do, I'm never gonna get any black votes, or you're gonna call them all sellouts, even if I propose something good, then there's no reason for me to cater to them. Now, that's the same reason that the Democrats don't feel like they have to cater to us. Since there's no strong Republican Party, why do I need to spend any time worrying about the black folks if I know they're never going to vote Republican? And so what winds up happening is, and I told you during my time in the Pat Quinn campaign, I literally heard the words, Mays, what are the blacks going to do? Vote Republican? Cut off all resources to the black campaign.
Okay. So, in thinking about black businesses, one of the questions from Facebook tonight is, what is it going to take to restore black businesses in Chicago? And that's from Vernon.
What up, Vern? Let me tell you, what it's going to take is the willpower. It's going to take the willpower because everybody else has all the good stuff, right? I talked to you about the clothing cartel. I talked to you about the fish and chicken cartel. You know, I know everybody thinks that I'm crazy, but you can call it a buying block, you can call it what you want, but it is meant to keep black people out. It's going to require us to take some collective action and focus and center our actions in one location, right? So it can't be one person opening one business on one block. It's got to be 6 of us saying, what are all the peripheral services that go with this business? So we know that it needs to be a barber shop. It can't just be, it's got to be a barber shop, a hair shop, a nail salon, a car wash, and a clothing store. If you're going to fix that community. But if you open up a standalone restaurant in a desert where nobody is coming, it's not going to work. So it requires us to go in and transform an area together.
Okay. Ready for the next question?
And it requires us to start not accepting these chumps in our neighborhoods. I'm calling for a black business chamber of commerce that asks the Arab Benevolent Association if they need to kick in or get kicked out. That's what I'm suggesting. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's real right there.
Revolution.
All right. So Chappelle from Facebook.
Chappelle.
So Mays,
Uh-oh.
do you feel black folks should build a coalition with Latinos again?
Let me tell you this. I believe that we should identify what our self-interests are first, and then build coalitions with whoever is necessary to get us what we want. See, the problem is we don't know what we want, so we join these coalitions with no ask. You gotta have an ask. You gotta know what you want the outcome to be. So I don't have a problem with coalescing with Latinos as long as it's mutually beneficial. We don't do win-win. We do they win and we ask what happened to us.
Okay, so we're gonna jump back to YouTube.
YouTube, what's up?
So now
Coffee's kicking in.
All right, so this is an open-ended question, Maze, but they want you to talk about the sellouts currently amongst us.
Not tonight.
Okay. All right. This is going to be an interesting answer to you. I don't necessarily believe in the concept of sellouts. Hear me out. I think that people reach different levels of consciousness at different points in their life based on their experiences. Now, some people may never have that experience, but I think that it is hypocritical. I think it's hypocritical to call people sellouts because of their jobs, right? Now, everybody that I know goes to some job. It's just how high profile it is. Every day at work, you have to walk past something that pisses you off, that you know ain't right, but you also have a family to provide for. Who am I to ever tell anyone that because they did not take a knee, that they shouldn't feed their families? Because we talk about the people whose kids are out on the streets. Now, I think that we have to create a safe place and a spirit of black folks seeing that we can do better collectively. See, the way it is right now is everybody be like, I'm not messing with you niggas because y'all gonna hold me back. But if we could put people in the circles of people that are going to advance them, I think you just got to show people how they can do it. Nobody's walking in their job being like, I'm turning over the desk. But you got to show them to understand that, brother, when you see that black person come in the workspace and your instinct is to be like, they ain't shit, when your instinct is to be who they think they are. I got way more expertise. I done did this before. Instead of saying your instinct is, man, there's another person that looks like me. How can we do business together?
That's real. That's real.
Right? And so the sellout is often the person that's gotten to the top. Because he done kissed all the butt. And guess what he does? Runs from you because you gonna call him a sellout. Instead of saying, hey brother, you made it to the top, you kissed all the butt. So I don't have to. I just need to kiss yours.
All right. So this question comes from Patah from Facebook.
Patah, what's up, dummy?
Do you think there is a black person in Chicago qualified to represent us and replace Rahm Emanuel?
I think there's a plethora of black people that are qualified to represent us, but there's not that many people willing to make the sacrifice. I could think of 10 people off the top of my head that I feel could be good mayors, right? Of Chicago, that love Chicago, that could, I don't know how they would deal with the fiscal stuff, but as it relates to what I feel about them and their ability to lead, I would be confident in that. But I think that they've done a very good job of breeding fear into black people. And even at the height of black political power, when our population was off the chain, we still took the number 2 slot. Right? So even the brothers that we know that's got the money, the wherewithal, the community respect, they don't want it. I mean, somebody has to want it not for themselves, but for our future. So, are there people? Yes. Yes, there are.
Okay. So this next question is from Kane.
Big brother Kane, Mufasa Ray.
What are the pros and cons
Good Lord.
of trying to invigorate a Democratic Party that doesn't address black concerns?
I think this is simple. I think this is real simple. I think that we have to detach our mind from the deep. We can be Democrats because it's convenient, but we can vote B, as in black, right? So now understand that I'm not trying to reinvigorate the Democratic Party. I'm trying to reinvigorate black people. See, I don't care about where the letter is just a means to an end. The letter is just an entry point to the process. So, when I look at Bill Dawson didn't say, ooh, let me make these white people more powerful. He said, how can I use black people to make me more powerful and benefit black people? That's when you had 28 black millionaires. And the Democratic Party understand. Let me help you understand. They know in Wayne County, there was 10,000 black people that did not turn out to vote for Hillary Clinton. They know that. Now they'll try to convince you that it was white working class men and white women and all that stuff. But if 10,000 black folks who was just sick and tired of being sick and tired got up and voted, Hillary Clinton to be the president. It's just a fact. Now, they can keep ignoring that and they can keep on having Donald Trump. Because right now, if you look at the map, they ain't got nothing but black people. And quiet as it's kept, black people seeing the same stuff. And I'm going to tell you that I know plenty old black people who, as soon as he said build a wall, was like, I'm down.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you can take us for granted if you want to and tell us we supposed to be mad, but I'm just telling you, I don't see that many black folks all pissed off. You see white folks telling us how mad we supposed to be, but you don't see black folks running up to the front lest they on the payroll. Now, my question is, when somebody asks me about a black and Latino coalition, I would think that the Latinos need to be thinking about trying to build a coalition with some black folks. Because if not, I would be telling people, is ICE hiring? Right? No, I'm just saying, like, if you're going to pit people against each other, you trying to tell me that if they went and told all the little homies that live on Pulaski at 22nd, that live on this side, on the north side of 22nd Street, you want to be in ICE? Them fools will be right out there rounding people up. So now, while everybody talking about what ain't gonna happen and ignoring black folks, y'all, it's real out here. It's real. I'm sorry. It's okay. I ain't trying to rebuild the Democratic Party. I'm trying to rebuild the black party wherever black people are.
All right, May, speaking of rebuilding the black party, Amina wants to know, what do black people need more of? Politics or power?
I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think that power is translated in politics, it's translated through business, it's translated through your education. Like if you have power, then all that other stuff gets in line. So we need more power, but understanding that politics, our lives are legislated by politics, and they can throttle power with politics.
Okay.
But remember also, my wheelhouse is politics. Right? That's what I do. That's what I eat, sleep, breathe. So obviously I'm gonna have an overemphasis there. I think but I think that the pillars of our community need to be restored. Business, politics, the streets or grassroots, religion, and education.
Okay. So Johnny wants to know.
Is that Johnny Medley?
Absolutely.
What up, Johnny Medley?
Can we as black people vote in a solid block?
Yes, and I think that one of the things that white folks have been done. First of all, shout out to Mark Wallace and 10 by 10 to win, because Mark Wallace is talking about that exact thing, and we need to pay attention to it. But yes, see, here's the thing. They've convinced us. How many times you hear, black people are not monolithic. Black people, we ain't all the same. Black people, we not monolithic. Black people, we different. Right? Until the police shoot your ass.
Yep.
So, here's me. How about we stick together on the vote, and then we can chop it up afterwards. But let's stick together on the vote. Like, could you imagine if all these white people came to our community and everybody was like, what's in it for the black people? Hey guys, you'll be at your church. What's in it for the black people? Hey, I just wanted to tell you, I was doing a community. Man, let me tell you. I was at a political meeting a couple months ago, and I sat smack dab in the middle, and I had on my What's in it for the black people shirt. And you know how they come, they ready. Look, this is how they come in. Hi. Let me tell you about what I've done, and I was in the black neighborhoods, and I did all the stuff for the community. And then they looking around the room, and you know everybody, and they look at that shirt. Uh-oh. This is not a friendly audience. And then, you know, they look for that smile. You know, let me tell you, this is what y'all got to do. You know how when those politicians be coming by, and they come to your joint, and they be, you know how when you looking at somebody and you look and they smile at you, and you be like, ain't no smiling. You know Rakim used to say, I ain't no joke. Rakim, how come you don't smile? Because I ain't no joke. Why are we cheesing when these politicians come around? Let me just tell you, if you post a rhyme selfie and you didn't ask what's in it for the black people, we got some questions.
All right. Our next question comes from John from Facebook.
John Rember?
Yes.
Dang! Go White Sox!
All right. His question is in all capital letters. Maze, are you going to run for public office?
Ooh, people are asking me.
No. No, let me tell you, there was a time when I wanted to run for public office, and I'm not going to tell you that it does not tickle my ego that if I had my dream, I would run for mayor of Chicago. I really would.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen.
But I also think that from the position that I sit right now, we may be able to make more people and do better for our community. So I have to make a decision of selfish versus can I help us more? And so in this case, selfishly, I would love to run for mayor. I really would. I mean, I really, really would. And I would love to have the opportunity to debate the mayor just so we can bring up the issues. But how realistic is it? I don't know. I think I think after this gubernatorial race and after we see how we flex our muscles, if black people are ready, then maybe who knows what can happen.
Okay. So, some questions specifically related to the historical nature of the broadcast.
Didn't say no.
All right. Did Harold Washington have anyone he was grooming to become a black elected official?
Harold Washington groomed quite a few people to become not just black elected officials, but elected officials throughout the process. I would encourage you all to read the book Fire on the Prairie. It's right here. It was one of the reference materials. But it talks about quite a few of the people. It talks about quite a few of the people who were involved after Harold Washington. You know, there's a lot of people that claim Harold Washington. We hear Doc Walls talk about it all the time. And he was the protege. You know, when no one with no declared protege, we can't really say that. I'm going to say that there was a whole plethora of people that were being trained, but where are they now? Right? So tell me the outcomes of the Harold Washington political apparatus. Okay, we got 4 minutes left. Y'all, I enjoy the question and answer series, so anytime we can do this again.
So, Sydney from Facebook.
Sydney!
Who's come the closest to fulfilling the Harold Washington legacy?
Good question.
Damn.
Nobody.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly, that's a great question. You know, I would love to say Barack Obama. I would love to say that. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think that Barack Obama has had the effect on Chicago that Harold Washington did. I think, and so I don't, you know, I think Harold Washington may in Chicago go down in Chicago folklore as just mythological forever. I don't know. I don't even think you can even try to, you don't even try to claim that. You just say, I got to move on.
Okay.
What? John Stroger? Came closest? Yeah, but the county board ain't the same as the city of Chicago. Like, I'll give you closest. I can give you John Stroger's closest, though. I'll give you that. I'll do that.
All right, so these last two questions are related to what's going on now and what's in it for the black people. So the first one comes from Kehinde.
Is that Moose Man?
Yes, it is.
What's up, Kehinde?
All right, I know that we can't afford to do a protest vote. So what can we do in the immediate
The hell we can't.
to send the message that we're awake and looking to make change right now?
What you mean we can't do a protest vote? Why? Why? I'm saying, what's the outcome? We need to be clear that boogeyman politics is over, right? The worst boogeyman that could possibly happen is Donald Trump. Are you still here? Are you alive? Are you living? Look, black folks, they gonna always give you a reason why you can't do something and not take us seriously. I think that every white politician should be worried about a black protest vote right now. I think everybody should be worried about what the hell am I gonna do if I can't bring this fool through my neighborhood talking about I'm good in the black community. No, they should be worried about anything that's on the table. Everything is on the table for white folks. Everything.
All right, Maze, with the last minute, can you tell everybody what is next up for class?
Next up for class, we are going to talk about not the black. So at the end of Harold Washington, and ladies and gentlemen, I did not get to the end of this presentation. So what we will complete next week is what happened with the dismantling, what happened after Harold Washington, how Daley ascended to power, how he broke up the future potential black power that could ever happen. We'll talk about all that. So we'll talk about the political families and the fallout from the Harold Washington.
Green team.
Well, the green team, the Latino team, there were a lot, guys. So in our next episode, after Harold Washington passed and Daley was elected, a series of events were put into place to dismantle black power and to make sure that Daley would never have to face a challenge like that again. So, the outcome of that was a set of rules and policies that affected electoral politics, but not only did it affect electoral politics, but Daley sought to break up the political machine as it existed and created his own new type of families. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll discuss that next week. This has been the What's in it for the Black People presents Poli-Sci 101, what black people need to know about politics in Illinois, the black political power history. Next week, we'll be back here at the same time. Thank you.
Did y'all see those numbers?
All right, now I'm going to tell y'all what. Can I say thank you to everyone? So